Okay, hi, we're with Seth Grigg from the Idaho Association of Counties. Hi, Seth.
Hey Steph, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us. You were once an MPA student. Maybe you can tell everybody how you ended up at the counties.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I think as all things, we're adapting to this virtual world. My organization is as well. We do a lot of training and development for our members who are county officials, and we're adapting to Zoom and other virtual platforms as well. I am a graduate of the Boise State MPA program. I graduated in 2009, spring of 2009. So that's 11 going on, well, 11 years now. I've big supporter of the MPA program. I think it's a great opportunity. I was a traditional student. So I came right from undergrad to the MPA program at Boise State. And for me, it was a great way of entering kind of a competitive workforce with skills that have really helped me through my career. Like many of you, now is really an uncertain time. We're in a recession. Governments are cutting back spending. I graduated, during the last recession, and I was fortunate when I went through the MPA program. I had hoped at becoming a city manager or city administrator someday. And obviously, that my career path changed when I graduated because, entities just weren't hiring. So I was fortunate enough to land a job as a policy analyst for the Idaho Association of Counties. And, that has been a springboard to me. I spent about 5 years with the association as a policy analyst, and then I left the association to be the executive director of the Association of Idaho Cities. Was there for about 3 years, and then came back to the Association of Counties as its executive director, and I've been here for roughly 3 years now. So it's been an interesting career path for me, and lots of adventures.
Well, I'm glad it's worked out. You've done great work at both organizations, in my opinion, and I think they're lucky to have you. So you've worked with both cities and counties. What are the big differences between those two kinds of governments and the kinds of things you worry about as an association?
Yeah, so I think when you're looking at the differences first and foremost between cities and counties, it's a matter of one, organizational structure, and two, the types of services that are provided. Um, Counties, much of what a county does is directed by the state through law. And so when you look at a county, counties operate the judiciary, the court system in the state of Idaho. Counties operate jails. We do public defense, prosecution. We could spend a lot of time talking about all of the programs and services that counties do. At the end of the day, they're directed by the state to do those programs and services. Cities, on the other hand, are they're creatures of the voters, essentially. So, in order to create a city, voters come together and they incorporate to create a city. And when you look across the state, most cities are similar, but they all provide slightly different levels of services. And if you look here in Ada County, for example, you've got the city of Boise that has police, fire, and sewer. And then you compare that to the city of Eagle, for example, that doesn't have police service, that doesn't have fire service, that doesn't have sewer service. Those are all provided either by the county or special purpose districts. And that's how the city was structured when it was created. And so I think that's one of the distinctions between cities and counties is, the county does what the state dictates the county does. Cities do what the voters dictate that the city does. And there's also a difference in organizational structure. Counties, for example, you elect the Board of County Commissioners as the governing body. They also serve as the executives. They're like the mayor and the city council in one. But then on top of that, you also elect the county clerk, the county treasurer, the county assessor, the prosecutor, the sheriff, and the coroner. Whereas with the city, the mayor and council are elected traditionally in Idaho. We do have a few council manager forms, but they're mostly mayor council forms. And then the mayor appoints the clerk, the treasurer, the chief of police, the city attorney. And so, there's a lot more control at the city level, top down as to, who is your attorney, who is your clerk, who is your treasurer. They're chosen by the mayor, whereas with the county, it's elected by the voters in a general election. And so there can be more conflict between individual elected offices at the county level when compared to the city level.
And another important distinction there is the elections for cities are at least nominally nonpartisan.
Correct.
And at the county level, it's really important whether the coroner is a Democrat or a Republican.
Exactly.
Now, Idaho law allows counties to change their form of government if they wish to, but no one has successfully done that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So counties do have the option of establishing an alternative form of county government. There are really two different alternative forms in Idaho. You could have a county executive commission structure in which the voters would elect a county executive, and the county commissioners then would become a legislative body. They wouldn't have administrative or executive authority like they do now. And then the other alternative would be a commission manager form of government where the county commission is elected and then they appoint a county manager to serve as the chief executive. It was about 5 years ago, Kootenai County explored creating an alternative form. They looked at going down I believe it was the commission manager form of government. Mm-hmm. You immediately, when you go down the road of trying to create an alternative form of government, have a conflict between the Board of Commissioners and the other elected officials, because in a traditional alternative form of county government, the elected offices of clerk, treasurer, assessor, etc., they all go away and they're appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. And so, the opposition was led in Kootenai County by the county assessor. He organized the opposition movement along with other county elected officials, and ultimately it never made it to the ballot. And so that's, the way that it's structured right now, it would be difficult to transition to an alternative form at the county level.
Yeah, I get that. People are self-interested in their positions and in the number of positions, and I get that. So even though the counties are, I try to distinguish between cities and counties sometimes. Like counties are like the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. The state is the puzzle, and counties are the pieces, right? They're kind of set by the Constitution. They're not easy to move or get rid of, and they're part of the state. And cities are like amoebas. They can grow and change and go away. Even though the county is mostly busy with things the state tells it has to do, like provide elections, provide the jail, provide all those other things, the relationship between counties and the legislature aren't always that constructive or that positive. Is that a fair way to describe that?
Yeah, there's natural conflict built into the relationship between the legislature and counties. One of the big issues that's been hotly, debated over the last couple of years with the legislature has been property taxation, right? In Idaho, we have a budget-driven property tax system where a local unit of government will set their budget within certain limitations and then levy property taxes based upon that particular budget. And we have seen over the last, really the last 5 years, assessed market value of properties in all of Idaho, not just the Treasure Valley, has just gone bananas. And so we're seeing year over year market value increases for residential properties of, between 10, 20, 30%, depending on the county. And so that creates a lot of pressure. Obviously, as your value goes up and you apply the levy rate to that value, you're going to pay more in property taxes. And there have been legislators that have, they've been exploring for the last few years ways to limit budget growth at the local level. And my membership, county officials, one of the points that they consistently make is that, look, we are mandated to do certain things, and there's a cost associated with those services. And so if you want to reduce the cost, then the legislature has to potentially alter the way counties provide these services, or say that, we make some of these mandates more discretionary. And so there's been some conflict between, what we're directed to do by the state versus how we pay for those services. And we expect that will be one of the primary points of contention this next legislative session as well. The legislature has created a property tax study committee. They've had one meeting. They'll meet again in another couple of weeks, and they'll meet monthly until the session resumes. And, they're exploring ways that, they can try to resolve some of these property tax increase issues around the state.
It's an unusual situation in that the legislature makes up the rules about how that tax works and gets collected and what limits there are, but they don't have to live under those limitations.
Yeah, so we have a number of, you talk about limitations. Our base budget can't grow by more than 3% a year. And so if the county has $1 million budget, that base budget can't increase by more than $30,000 for the next year. Now, there are some workarounds, like if you have new growth, that tax is added on top of the 3% increase. But generally speaking, you're capped at about a 3% growth rate a year. If you look historically and include the new growth, property tax budgets go up on average about 5% a year. The state of Idaho, they're more of a rate-based system, I guess would be a good analogy. And so they have a fixed sales tax percentage, and they have a graduated scale on the income tax side. And when you go to the grocery store to buy a gallon of milk, you pay an additional 6% on that gallon of milk, and that generates revenue for the state. And with income taxes, you're within a certain income bracket, and depending on where you're at in that scale, you're paying anywhere from 1 to 6% essentially on your income. And so however much is generated, that's what the state operates under. And oftentimes in recent years, we've seen state revenues go up 6, 7, 8% a year. Typically those revenues are coming in, and they're in excess of what is budgeted at the state level. So were they to operate under a 3% cap, for example, that would cut their revenues by the revenue growth by half. And so it is a much different world that the state operates in.
Absolutely. And one of the major functions of a public interest group like Idaho Association of Counties is to carry the interests of the counties to the legislature. So tell us how you figure out what your priorities will be in terms of lobbying and informing the legislature.
Yeah, so as an organization, all of Idaho's 44 counties are members of the association. We have 396 county officials that are our voting members. And we are very much a membership-driven organization. Every year, it's going to be different this year because of coronavirus, but we have an annual conference or a convention in September. It's here in Boise the last week. This year, we're doing a virtual business meeting instead of an in-person conference because of coronavirus. But it's at that conference we have every year that we set our legislative agenda for the coming year. And our membership, they're allowed to submit resolutions or legislative proposals that are vetted through a committee process. We have 6 steering committees within the Association of Counties that have they have kind of a germane area that they're over. We have an intergovernmental affairs committee, a justice and public safety committee, a transportation committee, a health and human services committee, a public lands committee, and a environment, energy, and land use committee. And so all of the resolutions that are submitted by the membership are assigned to a committee. The committee reviews that proposal and then makes a recommendation to the full membership as to whether or not the proposal should be endorsed. And then the full membership votes on these legislative proposals. Typically, we will have anywhere from 10 to 20 legislative proposals that'll come before the membership and are approved. And then we have a legislative committee that consists of county officials from throughout the state. We have commissioners and all of the other elected offices represented on our legislative committee, and it's structured geographically, so we represent the various interests of the state, because believe it or not, depending on where you are in the state of Idaho, there's a little different philosophy on how to govern. It's almost like we're 3 or 4 states combined into one, with North Idaho, the Treasure Valley, Magic Valley, and Eastern Idaho, and each has a little different flair and philosophy. And so the legislative committee will take that group of 10 to 20 legislative proposals and prioritize them. And we focus as an association on the top 5 priorities. We just don't have the bandwidth to run 10, 20 pieces of legislation. So we try to limit it to 5 to 10 proposals. This year, obviously, it's going to be different because we're not having an in-person conference. We are, again, doing kind of a virtual business meeting where resolutions will be voted on. But we've encouraged our membership this year because of kind of the unique nature. We don't know what to expect of the legislative session, whether it'll be a traditional session or a modified session. So we have recommended to our members that we run only what we would consider emergency legislation or legislation that must be enacted in the next year. Anything else we're asking our membership to hold back on, just so that we can adapt to whatever comes in January. And also we know that we're going to be focusing a lot on property taxes. And, honestly, we'll be playing a lot of defense this year with legislation that's introduced by other stakeholder groups and also individual legislators.
What's it like being a lobbyist? Like, what do you spend most of your time doing when you're in that role?
It's interesting. We are different than other interest groups or other lobbyists. So at the Capitol, if you're going to hang out for the legislative session, you really have kind of 2 types of lobbyists. You've got the association lobbyists, and then you've got contract lobbyists that typically represent individual corporations. And the contract lobbyists, I think a good way of describing the contract lobbyists is, they're a mile wide in issues, but only an inch deep. And so they might have a dozen clients that they're representing, and they're trying to represent all of the interests of those various clients they have. But because they represent so many different interests, they don't go very deep in their knowledge of that particular topic. The contract lobbyists, typically have a little more resources available to them to wine and dine legislators. And they also have the benefit of, as they represent corporations, those corporations typically will contribute funds to the re-election or election of candidates. And so they're also, able to make campaign contributions on behalf of their clients. The association lobbyists, we operate in a little different world, so to speak, and that, we're representing a specific group. And so we have a lot of depth of knowledge, but, we're not as widely spread out as what the contract lobbyists are. And so, I focus exclusively on county issues, for example. And, there are 2 types of, associations or interest groups. You'll have those that represent kind of private interests, and you'll have those that represent public interests. And I think a key distinction between the 2 is, again, a lot of the private interest groups will make campaign contributions, for example. As a public interest group, we don't have a PAC that we manage, and we don't make campaign contributions. And so, in some respects, that might be a disadvantage, but in others, it's an advantage, because a legislator doesn't expect us to, come to the table with money for campaigns. We're not going to endorse candidates. So it allows us, I think, to go in and have a productive conversation with all individuals, because they know that we're not going to be running candidates against them or funneling money to an opposing candidate. The benefit that we have representing elected officials is that, every legislator has at least one board of county commissioners that they represent. Some of our legislative districts span, 4, 5, 6 counties, and they have, that many more county commissioners that they represent. And so we can rely on our county commissioners to reach out on a personal level and a political level to their legislators and help make the case for, why our legislative priorities should be passed or why we're opposing specific legislation. And so I think it's the best world to be in, where we don't have to worry about electioneering, but yet at the same time, we have the political influence of our county elected officials that we can work through.
Good. Do you have any advice for MPA students?
Oh boy. One is, take advantage of all the networking you can while you're in the MPA program. I'm amazed at how many of the students I went to school with, I interact with on a regular basis, be it whether they be working for a governmental entity or whether they're, working as a lobbyist, for example, at the Capitol. So really take advantage of the networking that you can. If you are a working professional, obviously you've got some networking built in with what you're doing. But if you're a traditional student, really, take advantage of opportunities for internships and to research and volunteer for entities, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to give you exposure during the legislative session. Pay attention to what's going on. You'll be a leg up on everyone else. And so, I mean, really, I think networking is probably the best thing that you could do.
Absolutely. It's still possible, even if a little clunky in the Corona era, but it's still possible to make those connections with people through email and Zoom and all those other ways. Yeah. Seth, thanks so much for taking the time to meet with us today and tell us a little bit about the counties and what they're up to. And good luck with the special session coming up, which is, I've forgotten. Oh, it's limited to election by mail and something else.
Well, they're still working that out. Yeah, elections is one component. Coronavirus liability is another issue. And so as we're talking right now, the joint education committees are meeting and talking about legislation. So there may be an education component to the special session as well.
Interesting. Okay, well, take care and good luck with that. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.